bushfires were started by lightning or volcanic activities. Presently, most bushfires are the result of human activities. Accidental fires from palm wine tapping, cigarette smoking, spread of fires set on farms, etc. In Ghana, bushfires are perennial and widespread in the savanna zones. In the forest zones, there are occasional episodes of bushfire, especially during long dry seasons. The ultimate results are environmental degradation and loss of biodiversity. Effects of bushfires: reduction of soil fertility, bulk release of soil nutrients to the soil surface. Fire stimulates the germination of perinating organs and seeds of many grass species. Most woody plants are susceptible to fire. Many young ungulates are often destroyed. Nests, eggs, and young ground nesting birds are destroyed. Insects and several arthropods are killed. Burrowing rodents escape death, but most of their food is burnt. Occasional destruction of human settlements and plantations. Bulk release of air pollutants into the atmosphere. Control of bushfires. Legislation. Intensification of education on the effects of bushfires. Creation of fire belts around small human settlements and plantations. Use of fire as a weapon for hunting should be discouraged. Creation of fire belts around newly cleared lands for farming before burning the cleared vegetation. Deforestation. As a result of high population growth rate, there has been rapid depletion of forests to expand agricultural land to produce food for the ever-increasing population and logging to provide wood for export and domestic use. Effects of deforestation. Changes in climatic conditions. Reduction of soil moisture. Conversion of forests to savanna. Destruction of nutrient cycles. Leaching and soil erosion. Drying of watersheds and freshwater systems. Control of deforestation. Alternative sources of foreign exchange should be sought for to replace timber. Intensification of afforestation and reforestation to provide wood for domestic use and export. Education on the effects of deforestation. Human fertility regulation. Land scarification. Due to high population growth rates, the demand for housing has increased. This, together with other development projects like road construction and both conventional and unauthorized mining activities has led to serious land scarification. Effects of land scarification. Formation of craters, which provide breeding places for mosquitoes. Destruction of arable land. Loss of biodiversity. Destruction of the beauty of the scenery. Control of land scarification. Legislation. Restriction of sand and stone winning to marginal lands. Land reclamation. Shallow craters to be used for aquaculture. And education on the effects of land scarification. Overgrazing of natural pasture. The continued use of natural pasture without replenishment of nutrients is a regular feature of pastoral economies. In many places, overgrazing has occurred as a result of economic and social incentives. The destruction of natural vegetation leads to soil erosion and a reduction of the carrying capacity. In many African countries, the number of cattle one possesses tends to be a status symbol among pastoral communities, irrespective of their condition. For example, in the Guinea and Sahel savanna zones of Ghana, where the bride price is paid in cattle, the wealth and social status of an individual is measured partly by the size of his cattle herd, which is kept in open ranges. Such environmentally unfriendly methods of animal husbandry jeopardize the sustainability of the already fragile savanna ecosystem. Overstocking of cattle and small ruminants usually destroys natural vegetation and accentuates the problem of drought in these areas. Pollution. Pollution contributes significantly to environmental degradation. Pollution occurs when substances or energy are released into the environment in harmful amounts as a direct or indirect result of human activity. The huge droppings of bats, guano, as in the Mprisi cave at Boyem in the Techiman district of Bunahafo, come close to being an example of natural pollution because the concentration of nutrients in them is so high that it prevents almost any organism from colonizing them. Examples of such natural pollution are rare because natural selection nearly always leads to the evolution of organisms that can utilize the metabolic products of other organisms. Substances that have the potential of polluting the environment are termed pollutants. There are two forms: persistent and biodegradable pollutants. Land pollution. The various land pollutants include domestic wastes and sewage, which tend to produce a foul smell and serve as a potential source of pathogens. These pollutants are biodegradable. They can be buried or used to reclaim land, especially craters that have been produced by mining activities. Another form of control is the use of incinerators to dispose of refuse. They can also be readily controlled by using them in biogas production for generating energy or by converting them into organic fertilizers for crop production. Plastics, broken glasses, bottles, and enamelware from industries and homes tend to be persistent on land. To prevent these from polluting the land, they need to be recycled, or where appropriate, they should be replaced with biodegradable substitutes. Beads are extensively used in Ghana as amulets, rosaries for saying prayers, and as ornaments for various occasions. In Ghana, beads are often manufactured from plastics and broken glass. A boost in the bead industry should be a management strategy for land pollution. Another major source of land pollution is metallic scraps and abandoned motor vehicles. These could be recycled to produce iron rods for the construction industry. In areas where large-scale commercial farming is practiced, the major sources of pollutants are pesticides, herbicides, inorganic fertilizers, and farm refuse. Pesticides and herbicides, though, are meant to control pests and weeds. Most often, they also destroy desirable organisms, such as earthworms and small soil arthropods, that normally help in improving soil fertility. Equally, they often eliminate insect pollinators. A way out is the judicious use of agrochemicals. Farm refuse consists of organic materials that readily decompose through natural agents. When produced in large quantities, they can be used as organic fertilizers, buried, or used in biogas production. Land pollutants. Domestic wastes and sewage. Plastics, broken glass, bottles, and enamelware. Metallic scraps. Agrochemicals. Example, pesticides, herbicides, and inorganic fertilizers. Farm refuse. Control of land pollution. Use of domestic and farm refuse and sewage for biogas and organic manure production. Recycling of plastics and broken glassware, example, for the production of beads. Judicious use of agrochemicals. Intensive education on potential pollutants and the effects of pollution. Enactment of laws that will protect the environment from degradation. Water pollution. Like land pollutants, water pollutants are varied. They include agrochemicals, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and farm refuse, which readily wash into water systems. The general effects of these are loss of aquatic life. In addition, when fertilizers are washed into water systems, they increase the amount of nutrients, thereby enhancing the growth of aquatic weeds, which might harbor vectors of disease, causing organisms such as water snail, the vector for Schistosoma spp. The causative agents of bilharzia or schistosomiasis. They can also cause algal blooms, which will increase the turbidity of water, thereby reducing the amount of light penetration. Judicious use of agrochemicals would reduce the possibility of these being washed from farmlands into water systems. Farm refuse is biodegradable and can readily be used to produce organic fertilizer. It can also be used to generate biogas or buried to produce compost, which can be dug out later and used to fertilize crops to improve food production. Most often, domestic effluents and sewage get washed into water sources and pollute them. These tend to be the source of disease-causing organisms. The decomposition of domestic effluents and sewage in water leads to reduction in dissolved oxygen in water, causing oxygen starvation of aquatic organisms. The results of organic decomposition are increased nutrient concentrations in water and the growth of aquatic weeds. To prevent water pollution through sewage and domestic effluents, these potential pollutants must be treated before being discharged into water systems. Other potential water pollutants are oil from oil wells and that flashed on high seas from oil tankers, detergents and dyes from textile industries, and warm water used to cool energy generating plants. Oil pollutants reduce the surface tension of water, thereby denying the organisms that inhabit the air-water surface an important resource for survival. Oil also affects aquatic birds. It is carcinogenic and prevents the dissolution of oxygen, thereby causing oxygen starvation of aquatic organisms that utilize dissolved oxygen. Oil pollution can be minimized through legislation against the flashing of oil from oil tankers at high seas. Effluents from textile factories, which contain dyes and detergents, should not be discharged into water systems. These tend to be poisonous to aquatic organisms. Moreover, water for cooling energy generating plants should not be directly discharged into water systems. Warm water reduces the amount of oxygen that can dissolve in water to provide the needed oxygen for aquatic organisms. In addition, hot water can directly kill most aquatic organisms. Water pollutants, agrochemicals and farm refuse, domestic effluents and sewage, oil from oil wells and oil tankers, industrial wastes, example, dyes and detergents from textile factories, warm water from nuclear reactors and energy generating plants, control of water pollution, use of domestic and farm refuse and sewage for biogas and organic manure production. Judicious use of agrochemicals, intensive education on potential pollutants and the effects of pollution. Enactment of laws that will protect the environment from degradation. Air pollution. Two major concerns of humanity are global warming and ozone layer depletion. Global warming, also referred to as the greenhouse effect, is the phenomenon whereby there is accumulation of certain gases in the atmosphere to form a blanket that prevents heat energy radiated from the sun onto the Earth's surface, escaping back into the atmosphere. Greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and other gases in minute quantities, together with chlorofluorocarbons. Most of these gases are produced naturally in the environment and escape into the atmosphere. However, human activities have caused a considerable increase of these in the atmosphere, and thus having negative impacts on the climate and biodiversity. Another major cause of global warming is the reduction of plant cover on the earth as a result of poor farming practices, irresponsible utilization of plant resources, and rampant bushfires in most tropical areas. The effect of this is that there is reduction of photosynthetic activity and a large proportion of carbon dioxide generated through human activities get accumulated in the atmosphere, contributing significantly to global warming. The solution to this is intensive education on the effects of deforestation, judicious exploitation of plant resources, and embarking on vigorous tree planting exercises worldwide. Effects of global warming. Rise in environmental temperature. The resultant effect of the increasing environmental temperature is a rise in sea levels because of the melting of icebergs in the polar regions. The other effects are the surface temperature of oceans at the equator is getting hotter than normal. This means that more water from the oceans evaporates and rises higher than usual and causes winds to be stronger. These winds carry the moisture-laden air further from the lower latitudes towards the higher latitudes. The result is that subtropical latitudes 3 to 35 degrees north receive less rain than usual and more likely to suffer droughts. At higher latitudes 35 to 75 degrees north, floods are more likely than usual. Addressing the global warming problem. Reduction in the use of fossil hydrocarbons for the generation of energy. A halt to the irresponsible utilization of plant resources. The use of alternative sources of energy. Example, nuclear, hydroelectricity, wind, tidal, solar, etc. Massive afforestation and reforestation programs. Intensive education on potential pollutants and the effects of pollution. Enactment of laws that will protect the environment from degradation. The presence of chlorofluorocarbons in large quantities in the atmosphere has an additional problem on life on this planet. It is causing a phenomenon known as ozone layer depletion. Ozone is a rare form of oxygen with the formula O3. It is present Man's environment may be considered as being of two types: the natural environment of biomes, soils, water, and the atmosphere which preceded him by millions of years, and the human world of social institutions and artifacts. The natural environment is a self-sustaining system where there is complete interdependence between the biotic and abiotic components. Evolutionists believe that the natural environment's origin dates back more than 4,500 million years, and it has been undergoing gradual modifications since it first evolved. Man, as a component of the natural environment, is believed to have evolved between 1 and 2 million years ago. Since the evolution of man, he has depended on the natural environment for survival. The past 10,000 years have witnessed a dramatic change in the natural environment. In attempts to improve his standard of living, man has utilized his scientific knowledge and tools to modify the natural environment. This has led to the humanization of the environment. Man no more depends on wild fruits for his source of food, nor does he directly depend on medicinal plants in the wild for medication. Potent drugs have been developed to combat diseases. More effective mechanisms of food production have evolved through mechanization and the production of high-yielding varieties, creation of housing, evolution of fast and reliable means of transportation and communication systems, development of mechanical devices to replace human labor, supply of safe drinking water, adoption of efficient sewage disposal systems, elimination of several communicable and waterborne diseases, provision of recreational facilities, etc. The results of these are the reduction of human mortality, enhancement of survival, and increase in fertility. The two major density-dependent factors, starvation and disease, which hitherto regulated human numbers, are now reasonably managed. This has led to a rapid increase in human numbers. The rapid technological advancement and industrialization, coupled with the attendant rapid increase in human numbers, have had serious deleterious effects on the natural environment. The natural environment is unable to contain the byproducts of technology and industrialization. Neither have the biological systems been able to recycle the huge volumes of human waste and refuse. The human species has been an agent of change of geometric proportions, a change that has a disastrous potential. This documentary, Man and His Environment, highlights the effects of humans on the environment and draws on examples from Ghana The video advocates traditional management techniques for the sustainable utilization of natural resources and environmental protection. Population growth and the environment. The first populations of human beings were supposed to have evolved some 2 million years ago, and probably in Africa. The human population at 10,000 BC has been estimated at between 2 and 20 million. It reached the 1 billion mark in 1850 AD. Currently, it stands at 6.3 billion and is expected to be 12 billion by 2150. Human population growth has been geometric at an annual rate of about 2%. In sub-Saharan Africa, the rate is about 3.5%. Ghana's population currently is about 20.5 million and is growing at an annual rate of 2.4%. The phenomenal high population growth rates worldwide have been attributed to technological advancement, which has led to an improvement in healthcare delivery in most countries and an improvement in the nutritional status of most families. These have minimized mortalities and enhanced fertility. The capability of the earth to support life of all kinds is diminishing. Signs of environmental degradation are pervasive. Cropland is rapidly decreasing and soil fertility declining at an unprecedented rate. Pasture land has been overgrazed and fisheries exploited beyond sustainable levels. Water bodies have suffered extensive utilization for both domestic and industrial use. Added to these is the extensive pollution from domestic and industrial effluents. Natural forests, which help stabilize the climate, moderate water supplies that harbor the diversity of terrestrial life forms, continue to decline. Effects of high population growth rates. Unemployment. High dependency ratio. Low standard of living. Increase in social vices such as armed robbery and prostitution. Migration of the poor from rural areas to urban centers. Movement of the poor to marginal lands for sustenance. High pressure on social amenities. Increase in pressures on natural resources, which is jeopardizing their sustainable utilization. Ghana, population and resources. Ghana's forest resource covers about 8.2 million hectares, out of which 3.8 million hectares are reserved. The forest does not only protect the watersheds, wildlife, medicinal plants, and serve as an essential component of the ecosystem, but plays an essential role by providing forest resources such as timber and timber products for export and domestic use. The rapid rate of growth of Ghana's population has, however, put a severe stress on the forest resources, particularly the 4.4 million hectares which are not reserved. In the western region, about 20% of the reserved forest, 135,000 hectares, is damaged beyond recovery as a result of encroachment. The savanna belt, equally, is faced with the threat of devastation resulting from population pressure. Out of the 15.7 million hectares of savanna, only 880,600 hectares are reserved and protected from cultivation and grazing. The remaining 14.8 million are being depleted at an alarming rate of 20,000 hectares annually. In the Bono Ahafo region, areas that used to be under cocoa cultivation are now used to cultivate food crops due to high demand for food. Forests have, within a few years, been converted to savanna woodland. Watersheds and fertile riverbanks have also been cleared of their vegetation for tomato cultivation. And water resources, which hitherto flowed all year round, are now seasonal. Unauthorized timber exploitation has also contributed greatly to the devastation. The derived savanna could soon become Sahel. The destruction promises to be a continuous process so far as there is no workable program for poverty alleviation for the rural folks whose only means of survival is subsistence farming, which thrives on environmentally unfriendly practices such as bush burning and shifting cultivation. Ghana has 13 wildlife reserves covering a land area of 1.2 million hectares. The wildlife resources have a wide range of economic, social, and scientific values. Increasing demand for bushmeat has, however, led to rampant poaching of animals in the wildlife reserves. In addition, bushfires associated with farming activities and illegal hunting expeditions are increasingly destroying wildlife habitat. The total effect is that the wildlife, like the forest and savanna ecosystems, is degenerating rapidly. The marine and coastal ecosystems are also under serious threat from population pressure. The coastal fisheries are being exploited above sustainable levels, and total fish landings from the capture of fisheries have been fluctuating over the past few decades. The major cause of the increasing destruction of coastal resources is increasing concentration of population along the coastline. Mangroves, which serve as breeding grounds for some fish and bird species, are now intensively exploited for fuel wood and charcoal production. The coastal waters are also being degraded as a result of increasing organic and inorganic pollution from a variety of land-based and maritime activities. Increasing demand for housing has also led to increased unauthorized sand-winning activities along several stretches of the country's beaches. Effects of Ghana's high population growth on her natural resources. Increasing search for agricultural and grazing land. High demand for fuel wood and charcoal. The depletion of the forests and savannas respectively at the rate of about 22,000 and 20,000 hectares annually, respectively. The fishery resources being exploited beyond sustainable levels, increasing destruction of coastal vegetation through unauthorized activities, exploitation of mangroves for fuel wood, increasing organic and inorganic pollution of water systems, unauthorized exploitation of mineral resources leading to land scarification, urbanization. Another important effect of population expansion is urbanization, a phenomenon which has serious negative impacts on the environment. History has it that the seeds of urbanization were sown as far back as between 7,000 and 5,000 BC, the period which historians call the Agricultural Revolution. The nomadic hunters and food gatherers of those early times got settled in increasing numbers to domesticate animals and grow crops. This resulted in the production of food surpluses which freed people from toiling on the land. Soon, there developed division and specialization of labor among this newly non-agrarian population. From these primitive social developments, social structures recognizable today as cities emerged. The first cities arose along the rivers Tigris and Euphrates in what was known as Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq, between 4,000 and 3,000 BC. The impact of early urbanization was the destruction of forests in order to provide lumber and fuel for the city dwellers. This resulted in soil instability, desertification, and loss of arable land. In Ghana, thousands of people migrate to the cities in search of better living conditions. Though migrations to urban centers are to find more acceptable living conditions and economic opportunities, the majority of rural-urban migrants are confronted with conditions that are more appalling than where they migrated from. They most often find themselves in conditions worse than before. The general effects of urbanization are mass suffering as a result of a degraded environment, inadequate social services, and loss of arable land to expanding city structures. Effects of rural-urban migration. Inadequate social amenities. Poor drainage systems. Crowding in slums and in sanitary conditions leading to outbreak of diseases and epidemics. A polluted environment damaging the health status of urban dwellers. Inadequate food supply. Unemployment leading to social vices such as armed robbery, pickpocketing, and prostitution. Ecosystem modification. The demand for food to feed the ever-increasing human population and the search for other resources to improve living conditions have necessitated the modification of natural ecosystems in many ways, as seen, for example, the spread of agriculture. In the process, natural